The room was crowded, but everything felt cramped. It was a typical Sunday gathering at my grandmother's house, with too much food, forced laughter, and that tense atmosphere everyone pretends not to feel. My father sat at the head of the table, as always, with the same superior expression he never took off. I tried to remain neutral, silent, avoiding any confrontation, but he'd been staring at me for minutes, as if he wanted to tear me down with his eyes. Out of nowhere, between a sip of juice and a spoonful of rice, he blurted out, "You're no help at all." The sentence rang through the entire table like a bullet. Everyone froze. Absolute silence. My aunts lowered their eyes. My mother tried to hide it, and I felt a punch in the gut. It was gratuitous humiliation, without warning, in front of everyone. But before I could react, his cell phone started ringing, loudly, insistent, and everything that followed changed my family's history forever. Share this story to reach further. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video on WhatsApp. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. I'll be very happy to read each comment. The ringtone was strange, not the usual one. It was an emergency alarm. He tried to turn it off, but the name that appeared on the screen caught the attention of those nearby. Gabriella, office. It wasn't the name of anyone in the family. And even if it was, the way he turned pale revealed more than any explanation. He stood up abruptly, cell phone in hand, and left the table saying, "I'll be right back." No one commented. But everyone sensed it. Something was off. I stood still, processing the pain and curiosity simultaneously. He'd always treated me like a burden, as if my existence were a nuisance he endured out of obligation. But that cell phone, that call, felt like the beginning of something much bigger than yet another public humiliation. And for the first time, I wanted to understand what was hidden behind his gaze, behind the mask he'd worn for years. I got up from the table and went after him. Not for revenge, but because something inside me screamed that I needed to hear. I needed to see. I could no longer live without understanding the cracks in this house that pretended to be solid. This was just the beginning, and my instincts told me, if I kept going, there would be no going back. I walked out the back door and saw him across the yard, leaning against the car, speaking softly, tensely. He didn't see me. I ducked down and went to the side window. I could hear a few words. "Calm down. I know we agreed. Not now. Not like this." He was nervous. I'd never seen my father nervous around anyone. He'd always been the one in control. But there, he seemed cornered. And this woman on the phone had power over him. "No one knows. Of course, it's just between us," he said. My heart raced. What was he talking about? Betrayal? Debt? Blackmail? I hid, silent, my blood boiling and my breathing heavy. I had no idea what I would find, but it was already clear. That call was a threat, and my father, the same one who accused me of being unhelpful, was hiding something serious. I waited for him to hang up. When he came back inside, I remained in the backyard. I needed to think. Everything he said brought me closer to a revelation I wasn't sure I wanted. I went back around the side of the house, entered through the garage, and went straight up to my room. I grabbed my laptop and looked up the name I saw on the screen. Gabriella plus office. It didn't take long to find something that completely stopped me. Gabriella had a professional profile online. She was a forensic psychologist, specializing in family mediation. But there was one detail. She worked at a psychological support center for secretly adopted teenagers. And more importantly, she had a video session where she mentioned my last name. My fingers froze. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a clue. I returned to the living room, my face blank. My mother noticed. "Are you okay?" I just nodded. Because no, I wasn't okay. And worst of all, I was about to discover that my story, my origins, my entire life, might not be what I'd been told. And if that were true, my father's words at that table took on a completely different meaning. I returned to my room and stared at my laptop screen. I rewatched Gabriella's video over and over. She talked about cases where children were raised as biological children, but had actually been secretly adopted, and how this destroyed entire lives when the truth came out. The way she spoke, it was as if she were telling my story, even without knowing it. And my last name was there, undisguised, without any room for doubt. The penny dropped abruptly. My entire childhood, the strange looks, the cut-off comments, it all seemed to make sense now. I started remembering a time, when I was 8, when I heard my aunt say, "He doesn't even look like the rest of the family," and my mother cut her off instantly, as if she were protecting a dangerous secret. At the time, I thought it was just nonsense. Now, I understood. It was a crack. I walked downstairs in silence and found my mother washing dishes. I asked straight away, "Who's Gabriela?" She froze. She stopped what she was doing. She took a deep breath and tried to hide it. "I don't know what you're talking about." But it was a lie, and it was written all over her face. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted the truth. I saw the video. She said our name. She's an adoption psychologist. "Tell me the truth." She didn't answer. She let the water run, her eyes fixed on the bottom of the sink. Then she said, "It wasn't supposed to be like this. You were never supposed to find out." My stomach sank. "So it's true?" I asked. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "You were another woman's. We took you as a baby, loved you, raised you, and thought it was enough." It was like falling into a bottomless abyss. My knees gave way. I sat on the kitchen floor like a lost child. The entire foundation of my existence crumbled there, amidst plates and glasses. My mother, or rather the woman who raised me, knelt beside me. She tried to hug me, but I pulled away, not out of anger, out of desperation. I no longer knew who I was, or who to trust, and in that moment, I just wanted to run away. But the most pressing question was still stuck in my throat. If they adopted me, who was my real mother? And why didn't anyone think I deserved to know? My mother wiped away her tears with the back of her hand and said, "We never had the courage. But now, maybe you have to go after her." Those words broke me inside. I hadn't asked for this truth, but now, I needed it. I went upstairs to my room carrying the weight of 1,000 truths. Each step felt like a blow. I opened the drawer of the cabinet where my mother kept documents and began rummaging through it, my hands shaking. It was risky, but I couldn't wait. I found a red folder full of old papers, bills, vaccination records, school reports, and there at the bottom, an old manila envelope with my name handwritten on it. I opened it slowly. Inside was my original birth certificate, the one I'd never seen. And there, in the mother field, was written a name I'd never heard. Luciana Paiva. My heart raced. Beneath the certificate, an old court paper. Termination of provisional custody. It was official. I was handed over to my current family when I was less than a year old, without ever having had a chance to know where I came from. The room began to spin. It was too much information, too fast, but the only thing that mattered now was that name, Luciana. Who was she? Where was she? And why did you turn me in? Did you do it because you wanted to? Were you forced? Was it dangerous? Or did he love me, but he had no choice? The questions came like an avalanche, and I knew no one else would have the answers, only her. I went back online. I typed in my full name. Several irrelevant results appeared, outdated profiles, duplicate names, until one of them caught my eye. Luciana Paiva, retired nurse, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the town where my grandmother said she'd lived before everything changed. Now I knew what she meant. That was my next stop, even though I was scared, even though I didn't know what to expect. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, repeating her name. Luciana, Luciana, the woman who brought me into this world, and then left me. The woman who gave me my name, and then disappeared. The woman who might have all the answers, but could also bring more pain. Deep down, I just wanted to know, has she ever thought of me in all these years? The next day, I announced, "I'm going to Tulsa." My mother tried to stop me. "You'll get hurt more." But it was too late. I was already hurt. I just couldn't stay in the dark. For the first time, I was going to take control of my own story. And nothing, not pain, not fear, not shame, was going to stop me. I packed my bags in the silence of my room. I didn't take much, just the essentials and the envelope with my documents. Each folded item of clothing felt like a symbol of rupture. I quietly descended the stairs, but my mother was already in the living room. "You don't have to go," she said, her eyes filled with fear. "I do," I replied. "If I don't go now, I'll carry this hole forever." And I walked out the door. I hit the road with my heart in my throat. Tulsa was 3 hours away. The radio was off, the car silent, and all I could hear was my thoughts screaming. Did she still live there? Would she recognize me? What if she rejected me? The pain of not knowing was almost physical, but at the same time, there was something liberating in seeking my truth with my own hands. Halfway there, I stopped at a gas station. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. "Who are you?" I asked quietly. For the first time, I had no answer. It was as if I were being born again, far from the narrative I'd been given. It was frightening, but also fair. No one can live with a name they don't know, with a past that has been erased for convenience. I got back on the road and drove to the address. It was a simple, quiet neighborhood, houses with porches and hanging flags. The number was 312, a beige house with plants in the windows and closed curtains. I parked across the street. I took about 5 deep breaths before getting out of the car. My legs were shaking. The world seemed to be in slow motion. I walked to the gate and rang the doorbell. It took a few seconds. A woman appeared behind the screen door. White hair, a tired look. She opened it slowly. Yes? My body froze. Luciana? I asked. She looked at me strangely, then fixed her eyes. Silence. Yes, it's me. Who are you? And in that instant, my voice cracked, because everything I'd kept inside for years simply exploded. My name is Daniel, I said, my eyes already welling up. I think I'm your son. The world stopped. She clapped her hand over her mouth, staggered back and leaned against the wall. What came next, I'll never forget. Because her scream wasn't of fright or guilt. It was of pain. An old, torn pain that never had a chance to escape. And there, standing in the doorway, it all began again. She let me in without saying a word. The house smelled of coffee and longing. We sat in the living room, facing each other. For long minutes, no one spoke. Only our eyes spoke. Until she said, Daniel, I've prayed for this day every year of my life. And she began to cry. A soft, restrained cry, like someone who had held the whole world inside their chest for too long. She told me everything. How she'd gotten pregnant so young, without family support. How my biological father had rejected me. How my grandmother had demanded I be given away. It was the worst thing I've ever done. But I had no choice. Her voice trembled. Every word felt like a plea for forgiveness. And I listened to it all, unable to breathe properly. Because deep down, I thought she'd forgotten me. But she never had. She showed me a box full of letters she'd never sent. Names, dates, even drawings of what she thought I'd be like. This was the life I imagined, she said, pointing to a piece of paper with my name written in childish handwriting. It shattered me. I felt a lump in my throat, impossible to swallow. All the anger I'd held in for years began to dissolve right there, in that cramped room full of unlived memories. We stayed there for hours. She made tea. She told me details about her pregnancy. She showed me photos of her younger self. She told me about the day she gave me away. I kissed you 3 times and apologized 3 times, and that became a tattoo on my heart. Lost time could never be recovered, but what we did there was resist, rebuild, even without knowing how, even filled with fear. Before leaving, she hugged me tightly. If you want, I'm here. I'm here now. I left the house with puffy eyes, an open chest, and a feeling I couldn't name. It wasn't happiness. It was something else, something between relief and pain. But I knew, deep down, that the darkest part of the story had finally come to light, and with it, the chance to write something new. I drove back without music, without rushing. The world outside was the same, but I definitely wasn't. And when I walked into the house, my mother looked at me with a different silence, as if she knew, as if to say, now you know where you came from. And the only thing I could think was, now, finally, I know too. The next morning, my father was in the kitchen, alone, staring out the window as if in another world. I sat at the table without saying anything. He turned slowly and looked at me. There was something different in his gaze. You went to her, right? He said, not angry, just knowing. I nodded, and for the first time, he lowered his head. I knew this day would come. I just didn't think it would hurt this much. We were silent for long minutes, until he began to speak, without me asking. She was my friend. We grew up together. When she got pregnant, I tried to help, but your grandfather was an impossible man. He clasped his hands tightly, as if he wanted to turn back time. I was a coward. I agreed to raise you with your current mother. I thought it was better this way, but I never forgot that I owed it to you. Those words hit me hard. I'd always thought he despised me for who I was, but now I understood. He despised himself for who he couldn't be. You think I didn't love you? I loved you in the crooked way I could, but always afraid one day you'd find out. His voice cracked. I saw a broken man there, a man who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten how to get out. I took a deep breath and asked what was burning inside. Why did you say that at the meeting? That I'm no help at all? He closed his eyes, embarrassed. Because I needed to hurt you before you hurt me. Because it's easier to attack than to admit what I've been hiding. It was like a punch, but it was also true, raw, difficult, and necessary. I got up from the table and stood beside him. I didn't say I forgave him, but I didn't say I hated him either. I put my hand on his shoulder and simply said, "Now I know, and knowing is better than living in the dark." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. It was the first time I'd seen my father cry, not with anger, but with regret, and that was worth more than any apology. I returned to my room, my head spinning. The pain was still there, but now there was room for something else, reconstruction. For the first time, it felt like the adults around me were ready to be human, not perfect, not heroes, just real, and maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a different kind of family. A few days later, Clarissa texted me. She wanted to see me. She said she needed to talk about something delicate. We met at a discreet cafe in town. When I arrived, she was already there, fiddling nervously with her napkin. I approached, and she smiled, a small, careful smile. "I know I can't ask for anything, but can I say something?" she asked. I nodded, and she took a deep breath. "I don't want to take anyone's place. I just want to be around." That struck a chord. I knew this was the biggest tension between the three of us. Two women, two loves, two stories. "You don't have to choose between us," she continued. "You're part of both worlds, and I didn't come to steal. I came to add." Her tone was calm but firm, and that moved me in a way I hadn't expected. She told me she was afraid she'd push me away if I got too close, that she spent weeks wondering if she should disappear again. But she decided to stay, because now I know you're strong enough to handle anything. She saw me with a clarity few others did, and I realized right then that it wasn't about having a better or worse mother. It was about accepting that two women gave what they could, in their own ways. After breakfast, I invited my adoptive mother home for dinner. She accepted, and without saying much, I was honest. I spoke to Luciana today. She didn't respond right away. She just kept stirring the sauce. "She'll still be around," I added, "but that doesn't change who you are to me." Finally, she looked at me, and with tears in her eyes, she replied, "You are my son, even if you didn't come from me." That night was silent, but filled with understanding. There were no fights, no scenes, just the beginning of mutual acceptance. A new space where I could be whole, the child of two stories, of two women who, through different paths, chose to love me. And despite everything, despite the lies, despite the passage of time, they were still here. And in that moment, I understood. Identity isn't made of a single name on paper. It's the courage to bring together all the parts that made you, even the ones that hurt, even the ones that were hidden. Because being complete isn't being perfect. It's knowing where you came from, and still choosing where you're going. All it took was a cousin commenting on the family group. Daniel found his biological mother, and chaos began. My phone rang nonstop. Missed calls, missed messages, judgmental questions. "What do you mean, biological mother? Why didn't they tell us? Is this really true?" It was as if I were a walking scandal. The decades-old secret had become public in minutes. My adoptive mother called me, distressed. "Your aunt was outraged. She said this is a disgrace." Clearly the shame was theirs, not mine. I had done nothing but seek the truth about myself. But in their world, keeping up appearances trumped honesty. "You should have kept quiet," said one uncle. "Now all she needs is a share of the inheritance," said another. It was cruel. It was petty. And that was exactly why I had left. Luciana found out and called me. "Don't feel guilty about any of this," she said. "People are afraid of what they don't understand." And she was right. The truth reveals what others try to hide. Our family, so concerned with keeping its name clean, was rotten inside. And I, even though I was the target of criticism, felt cleaner than all of them. Because finally, I knew who I was. My adoptive mother tried to protect me. She said no one had the right to attack me. But I could tell that, deep down, she also feared it would open wounds for her. "You're not leaving, are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," I replied. "But I'm also not going to live a lie just to keep others comfortable." My story wasn't a mistake. It was a reality no one had the courage to face, until now. The most ironic thing? Many who criticized me now looked at me with disguised curiosity, as if my pain were entertainment, as if my past were just more gossip. I decided to walk away. Quietly, without making a fuss, without explaining anything, because those who need an explanation have already decided not to understand, and those who truly love me already understood everything without me saying a word. In those days, I discovered that family by blood isn't always family in your veins. Sometimes you choose to stay when the world turns its back, and amidst accusations, whispers, and judgments, I made a simple choice: to protect my peace. Because the truth hurts, yes, but carrying the lie for another decade would hurt even more. It was on an ordinary afternoon that everything connected symbolically. My paternal grandmother had a birthday, and for the first time, the whole family was going to get together again. The same table, the same chairs, the same tension in the air. I almost didn't go, but something inside me told me I had to face it. Not for them, but for myself. I needed to see everything head on, without lowering my eyes, without carrying guilt that wasn't mine. I arrived a little late. The conversation stopped as soon as I entered. Some smiled forcedly. Others looked away. I sat in the corner of the table, opposite my father. He looked at me with a slight nod. We said nothing. My mother served me food in silence, and for long minutes, no one dared to bring up the subject. It was all there, lingering in the air, but I no longer felt small. I felt whole. It was my father who broke the ice. Again. "Daniel helps more than anyone here imagines," he said, looking at me. The impact was immediate. Aunts glanced at each other. Cousins lowered their gazes. That sentence, so similar to the first, but now with a different weight, sealed the beginning of something new. And me? I just took a deep breath, because I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. I had already proven everything to myself. After lunch, I went to the backyard, the same one where I'd heard that connection weeks ago. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. It was like revisiting the epicenter of an earthquake, now with solid ground. Anger had turned to learning. Sadness had transformed into maturity. And the story, once confusing and full of holes, now made sense. With pain, yes, but with truth. My mother came to me. He stood silently beside me, and he said, almost in a whisper, "Thank you for not giving up on us." That broke me, because I understood how much she suffered too. She also had to deal with a secret that wasn't just hers. And even with all the mistakes, she remained here, strong, present, as a mother, not by blood, but by choice. On the way home, in the back seat, I opened the envelope I'd kept since Tulsa. Inside was a baby photo of me in Luciana's arms. On the back, a handwritten phrase, "You were always loved." I smiled, because in the end, that was what mattered most. The rest, time will take care of itself. A few days after my grandmother's birthday, I received a letter in the mail. It was simple, with no return address. When I opened it, I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Luciana. "Daniel, I thought a lot about writing this, but some things need to be said on paper." I sat up in bed and began to read. She talked about what it was like living all those years without knowing if I was okay, about the sleepless nights picturing my face, and about how, even from a distance, she was always my mother. She said she expected nothing from me, no title, no reparations. She just wanted me to know that, despite past decisions, love never left her. The world tried to erase me from you, but you still live within me. It was impossible not to cry. It was impossible not to feel the weight of it all. And at the same time, the relief of finally being seen completely, read, loved, accepted. With that letter in hand, I thought about everything I'd been through, from a lost son to a divided son. And now, finally, whole. My life would no longer be defined by what was hidden from me, but by what I chose to find. The silence was broken, the truth exposed, and love, even wounded, survived. I had two mothers, two paths, two versions of what it means to be a son, and in the end, all of this made me stronger. I returned to visiting Luciana frequently. Simple lunches, long coffees, healing conversations. She was different from the idealized image I'd created in my head for years, but she was also more real, imperfect, human, remorseful, present. On the other side, my foster mother approached me more gently. She began to ask questions, to listen more. For the first time, she stopped protecting me and began to understand me. My father, despite all his mistakes, kept trying, little by little, breaking down his own pride. He invited me to go fishing, just like he did when I was little. We didn't talk about everything directly, but his silences carried something new, regret and respect. He never apologized with words, but in every gesture, I saw that he understood what he'd done and wanted to do things differently. Over time, I discovered I didn't have to choose sides. I could belong to all of them, and to myself. I wasn't just a revealed secret. I was a new man, forged through lies, pain, discovery, and reconciliation. And in the end, with everything exposed, everything naked, I was still standing. Sunday, almost a year after that family gathering that changed my life, we were all at the table again. But now, there was real space. Luciana sat next to me, my mother on the other, my father at the head of the table, quiet but present. The food was the same, but the atmosphere was different. There was lightness, there was truth, there was silence, yes, but no longer out of fear, but out of respect. Halfway through lunch, my dad put down his cutlery. He picked up his phone. I froze. For a second, I was back in time, to that Sunday, to that phrase, to that ringtone. But he just took a deep breath, looked at me, and said, "This is where it all started, right?" I smiled. Yeah. He placed his phone in the center of the table and said, "And now this is where we start over." Everyone fell silent, but this time, it was a good silence. A silence of new beginnings. I never went back to being who I was, because pain transforms, truth liberates, and love, even when hurt, rebuilds itself. Today, I no longer need to hide anything. I carry no shame, no unanswered questions. My identity is made up of all these parts: the lost boy, the rejected son, the man who returned to seek his origins, and found much more than he expected. Sometimes to find ourselves, we need to lose ourselves completely, descend to the depths of truth, touch old wounds, see who stayed, who ran away, who loved even when they didn't know how. And that's what happened to me. I fell apart, but I rebuilt everything with more honesty, more love, more strength. And today, I am whole, because I went all the way. If you've heard this story this far, share this with someone who needs to hear it too. Subscribe to the channel, share this video on WhatsApp, and leave a comment about where you're listening from. I promise I'll read every comment. Thank you for sticking with me this far.